Let's jump into this. We're going to look at Daniel today, the book of Daniel. And let's just jump right into this thing. In chapter 1 of Daniel, verse 1, it says, in the third year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hands with some of the vessels of the house of God, and he brought them to the land of Shinar, to the house of his God, and placed the vessels in the treasury of his God. Then the king commanded Ashpenaz, the chief eunuch, to bring some of the people of Israel, both of the royal family and of nobility, youths, without blemish, of good appearance, and skillful in all wisdom, endowed with knowledge, understanding, learning, and competent to stand in the king's palace, and to teach them the literature and language of the Chaldeans. The king assigned them a daily portion of food that the king ate, and of the wine that he drank. They were to be educated for 3 years, and at the end of that time they were to stand before the king. Among these were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah of the tribe of Judah. And the chief of the eunuchs gave them names. Daniel he called Belteshazzar, Hananiah he called Shadrach, Mishael he called Meshach, and Azariah he called Abednego. So starts the story of who we're going to call the Fantastic Four today. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, which you often hear them linked together, but Daniel's in this too. These four stand high above the others of their peers, I would say, at this time. They're four teenagers, probably 15, 16 years old, if you can imagine. They're living in their home country, and here come the Babylonians. They come pouring down into their land. They overtake the land. Who knows how many people die in this thing? I mean, it's obvious a war. They go into the temple. They steal these sacred artifacts, parts of the temple. They take it back and put it in their God's temple. So it's a complete, just a really horrible thing to do. And they take the smartest and the best looking, the highest potential young men of Judah, and they relocate them to Babylon. And this is some 900 miles away. You can tell by the map. It's kind of hard to tell. They didn't just go straight to Babylon because that's like a desert there, right? So they had to go up and around as the map shows. So it's quite a journey. It's like around a 4-month journey if you're on a caravan. So it's not like just next door. You know, it's kind of sometimes it's hard to tell on the map. Like, well, that's not that big of a deal. Why don't they just go home? It's quite a journey there. And to make the transition complete in their assimilation into the Babylonian culture, they changed the names of these four guys. Hananiah, the Jewish name that his parents gave him, means Yahweh has been gracious. So it's talking about God, Yahweh, the Lord. That's what his name means. They changed his name to Shadrach, which means the command of Aku, which is their moon god. So they're trying to change their faith and their religion and their whole way of thinking. No longer are you worried about Yahweh, who's gracious. Now you represent Aku, the moon god. Mishael means who is comparable to God. Like our God is awesome and he is great and he is powerful. Who is comparable to him? They changed his name to Meshach, which means who is comparable to Aku. Azariah means Yahweh has helped. Maybe he felt a little betrayed in this whole process. They changed his name to Abednego, which means servant of Nego, paying homage to their fire god, which will come in interesting later on in his life. Daniel, which means my judge is God, was changed to Belteshazzar, which means Beltus, protect his life. That's the Babylonian chief god. Beltus, protect his life. Now, right away, they are invited to participate in the king's buffet. How many have been to a Brazilian? You know what a Brazilian steakhouse is? Okay, I mean, yeah, it's just like they bring these skewers and meat. You can eat all day long. It's fabulous, right? Of course, I've never experienced it personally. Yes, I have. It's amazing. It's amazing food, right? Basically, they're going to get the king's food. They get all the food they want all day long. The best quality from the best chefs, the best meats, the best everything. And they have this provided to them all day, every day. It is the best wine. Not the peasant's wine, not the stuff that kind of, was cheapo stuff, but like the very best in the land was given to them. And there's a good chance as these four, there was more than four, but the four that we have named, young Jewish men, for the first time in their lives, these four men probably had the opportunity to eat things that up until this point in their life they were forbidden. Because there were certain parts of the Jewish law you just don't eat, like bacon, pork, any type of pork. There's different types of meat, different parts of animals you're just not allowed to eat as a Jew. So here they are with the temple gone, with their parents possibly dead, or at least left behind. They'll never see their parents again the rest of their life. They're pretty sure of that. With an uncertain future ahead of them in a foreign land, maybe even with a little bit of anger toward God, like, hey, why didn't you protect the temple? Why didn't you protect my family? Why did this happen? With some of that, probably, no doubt, they're human, going on with some of that in their minds. You would think the average teenage boy would be ready for a little bit of rebellion. Like, all right, I'll show you. You did this to me, I'm going to do this to you, God. We're human. We all have a nature towards doing that. And it sounds like the average teen probably did indulge in some of the forbidden foods of the Babylonians, but not these four. Not the fantastic four we're going to talk about today. They are bold enough to ask for specific, special permission to not eat what the king had ordered. This is what you're going to eat. Here's your new menu. And they're like, can we try something else? Daniel's their spokesman in chapter 1, verse 8. It says, Daniel resolved that he would not defile himself with the king's food or with the wine that he drank. Therefore, he asked the chief of the eunuchs to allow him not to defile himself. They can have anything they want. The best of the Babylonian world power at that time. And they basically said, yeah, we'll have salad and water, please. That's what we want. That's going to be our diet. Here's a take home from this. Faithful people stand firm in their beliefs. Now, I know that's obvious. Duh. I mean, that's kind of by definition faithful, right? But this is a huge moment for these guys. This is a huge moment. What are they going to do? Do they play it safe? Just kind of go with the rules? There's a new set of rules now. They're not at home anymore. The temple's not happening anymore. They're completely away from everything they've ever known. Do they just go with the flow, even though it violates their own conscience? Do they take a chance at offending the king that just wiped out their country? I mean, this was the king who said, hey, you're going to eat my food now. You're going to drink my wine now. You're going to learn my language. Just like giving you new names. Are they going to say, oh, thank you, king, but no? Are they going to do that? That could lead to some pretty harsh treatment, maybe even death. Well, as it turns out, they're much more worried about offending God, the living God, Jehovah God, than they are the king. And so they make a deal with the guards. They eat vegetables for 10 days. Vegetables and water for 10 days. And then you compare us. You make the decision. Just give us 10 days. You compare us to the rest of the people who are doing this, and then we'll do what you ask. So they're being pretty wise about this for young teenagers. They have a pretty good plan. What do you think you would have done? I mean, that's hard. You've not been in that place before. None of us have. But man, what would you do? Would you go with the flow? Maybe kind of play it safe, just not say anything, but kind of pick through the food. I mean, you can go to a Brazilian steakhouse and just have the salad bar. It's possible. Seems kind of silly, especially for the price. But, you could, Or would you be the bold person to speak up and say, no, we're not going to do that, like these four? I'll be honest, I was thinking about this quite a bit this week, trying to decide, well, what would I do? I'd probably be the guy who just would quietly mind his own business, not raise a big stink. I wouldn't have talked to the chief, guard and say, hey, here's the deal, 10 days. I probably wouldn't have made that deal. I just wouldn't have eaten what was wrong, just kind of quietly kept to myself, I think. And I don't know that that's wrong. I mean, but man, these guys stick out here. This is a big moment of faith for them. They put their lives on the line, even though, it's just food. It wasn't like some big moral dilemma. It wasn't like some huge moment, a David and Goliath moment. It was like, hey, here's some new food. And they're like, no, thanks. They were faithful in little things, so that later on in life they'd be faithful in bigger things. But this is a small thing. It's just food. And it kind of makes you wonder, why is it only these four that speak up? We don't know how many came from Judah, but we know there were others, because they were like, just compare us to the others then. All these people you took with us, let us do this test and then compare us to. So we know there were others. Where are they? Where are their standards? Where's their faith? Are they just like going with it? That kind of sounds that way. Which kind of leads my second take-home thought here is your faith walk can be a very lonely walk. You know what I'm saying? You might be the only one in your world who's really a believer. I mean, a genuine follower of Jesus is not the wide road. You know, pop culture is not friendly to the teachings of Jesus. A lot of the world looks at us as kind of freaks. You know, Rosie O'Donnell once said the Christians are just as dangerous as Muslim suicide bombers. I mean, not even just saying hey, Christians and Muslims are the same, it's like, no, we're just as dangerous as suicide bombers. Like, what? I mean, where do you get that? I've heard politicians say, you know, those Christians are tearing the country apart. I mean, that seems kind of wild. Hollywood portrays believers. Anytime you see a character in any movie or sitcom that's like a Jesus person, they're always like weak wimps, not really relevant. You just kind of look at them and go, oh, I don't even like that person, you know. And it's like a brother, right? That's just kind of how we're portrayed. You may be one of the only believers where you work. I mean, you know how that is. You may be one of the only in your family who really believes and follows Jesus, who lives out your faith. You may be the only one in your neighborhood who doesn't sleep in on Sunday mornings. It's amazing the yard work that gets done when you get home on Sunday afternoons. You're like, man, I wish I had that kind of time, you know. And they're like, well, you do. I can't imagine what it would be like, though, to go to work each week, to work through tough issues in marriage and life, to struggle through any problem, any issue that might come up in life, or even just live out my faith without a family of believers. I mean, that's what's so important about this time. That, like, if nothing else, we have this, like, we get together this time and share life a little bit together. Like, hey, I'm not the only one. You know, it's so important to know that because it's a lonely walk. I'm not the only one who believes in Jesus. I don't think I could survive very well or very long without the fellowship of a church family. I just don't think I could. So anyway, the guard here, he gives them 10 days. He goes, okay, well, all right, we'll do that. I mean, it's 10 days, right? And then at the end of 10 days, he does compare them. And in verse 15, it says, at the end of the 10 days, it was seen that they were in better appearance and fatter in flesh than all the youths who ate the king's vegetables. So the steward took away their food and the wine that they were to drink and gave them vegetables. I love it when God is right. Even in the little things. I mean, it's just this kind of a minor deal. But even here, he's right. Well, the story goes on. They complete their 3-year program that they were a part of. It's in verse 17, the next verse. As for these 4 youths, God gave them learning and skill in all literature and wisdom. Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. So he had like an extra element there. At the end of the time, when the king had commanded that they should be brought in, the chief of the eunuchs brought them before Nebuchadnezzar, and the king spoke with them. And among all of them, there was none was found like Daniel, and Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore they stood before the king, and in every matter of wisdom and understanding about which the king inquired them, he found them 10 times better than all of the magicians and enchanters that were in his kingdom. So they have finished their training, and they go to work now for the new government in the Babylonian government and become really high-level leaders. As now they're like late teens. They're still young. They're still young people here. Now, I want to jump ahead a little bit in their lives to a fascinating story that's in Daniel chapter 3 that again shows this incredible faith that they have. King Nebuchadnezzar, verse 1, made an image of gold whose height was 60 cubits and its breadth was 6 cubits, and he set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Then King Nebuchadnezzar sent to gather the satraps, the prefects, the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the justices, the magistrates, and all the officials of the provinces to come to the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Now, I remember this story as a child. I mean, you got this in Sunday school, and my problem is I have like this very vivid imagination, And so I don't know if it's what they taught me or if it's just my imagination running with the information that I was given in Sunday school as a little guy. But I always remembered this like huge monster statue. I mean, like towering way into the sky, above and beyond anything you could possibly see, like this incredible structure. And I imagine like the whole nation of people gathered together around this, thousands and thousands of people gathered around this. And actually, the text we just read doesn't really give that picture, all right? It's just the government leaders that are sent to the grand opening, the dedication. So there's probably several hundred, but not necessarily thousands and thousands of them. And it is a significant statue. I mean, I'm not going to say it's not, but it was not the monster statue that I had imagined really most of my life. The height of the image, which is probably an idol, is 90 feet in our language, right? It's about 90 feet tall. That's pretty tall. If you take this room and flop it up, that's the statue. Okay, this is actually like about 100 feet, I think. So actually, this is a hair. So I mean, it's big, and it's only like 9 feet wide. So it's long and narrow. So it's not monster huge, but it's significant. Give you a little context of some maybe things you've seen before. The Statue of Liberty, 305 feet tall. Right? So that it's significantly larger than the statue we're talking about. Or more locally, you see the water tower. That's the water tower on like 48th and Hickman. It's like a historical landmark and stuff. It is 110 feet tall, making it just about 20 feet taller than the Nebuchadnezzar statue. Here's a picture of me standing in front of the water tower. If you go one more slide, there'll be give you some context of there. That's me. So imagine that like way more narrow, but about that same height. So it's significant, but not like monster huge statue. And I know it's not maybe super important, but I just think it's good for us to have a clear understanding of what it really actually looked like in what we're dealing with here, with the people we're dealing with. But that's not the coolest part of the story. They have the statues, probably an idol to one of their main gods. And chapter 3, verse 4, here's the coolest part. The herald proclaims, they have all the government officials together. You are commanded, O peoples, nations, languages. Again, their approach to conquering nations, they would go in, conquer the place, and bring in their finest young people to come in. So they have people from multiple nations and languages coming in, their government leaders in Babylon. So you're commanded, O peoples, nations, languages, that when you hear the sound of the horn, the pipe, the lyre, the tigrin, the harp, the bagpipe, every kind of music, you're to fall down and worship the golden image that the king Nebuchadnezzar has set up. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be immediately cast into a burning, fiery furnace. Therefore, as soon as all the peoples heard the sound of the horn, the pipe, the lyre, the tigrin, the harp, the bagpipe, every kind of music, all the peoples, nations, and languages fell down and worshiped the golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. So it's real simple. When the band starts playing, you all fall down. Everybody bows down. We have this really cool idol I put together here. It's really monstrous, and it was fantastic and amazing to look at. Probably their main god, Meshach. And whoever doesn't bow gets burned in this fire, this furnace. Now, that's probably not a furnace that they built like for execution. It's probably because they had built a large kiln there to create the idol. That's what most scholars think. It's like, I mean, why would you just create a furnace just in case, right? So it's like they already had a furnace there that they could make the bricks and melt the metals. It was gold overlaid and so forth. So the picture on your right there is kind of a drawing. It was probably like where it was very large at the top, and then at the back side there was like a door where you could like look in and see what was going on, which is pretty important to the rest of the story. So the band plays, everyone in the crowd bows, except 3 guys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Daniel's probably back in Babylon because he had another promotion and he had some stuff going on in chapter 2. So he's probably hanging out there because he's taking care of the area there. So the whole Fantastic Four isn't there, 3 of them are. Somebody tells the king that they didn't bow. And this is what kind of confuses me, because they're probably, like I say, it would have been kind of obvious. Like, everybody's bowed but those three guys. But he didn't notice, maybe because he was bowing. I don't know, because he was, it's his God too. His idol he was worshiping. The king confronts the three and says, hey, well, was that true? You weren't really bowing? Now, I kind of take this as, you ever been in a prayer group and someone says, hey, you didn't close your eyes? I'm like, well, that means you didn't have your eyes closed. I mean, how do you know? How do you know I wasn't praying? You weren't praying. It's one of those things. That's what these guys had going on. Hey, these three didn't bow. Goes and tells the king. The king confronts him and says, okay, I'll give you one more chance. This is really easy. The music's going to play. The band's going to play. As soon as they start playing, you bow down. Everything's good. We go on. You guys have your jobs. It's really wonderful. If you don't, I kill you today. And he says, he ends his conversation with them saying, and what God will be able to save you from that? The fire. What God can save you from that? And I love their answer. It's in verse 16. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. You ask us which God's going to save us? We don't have to tell you. If this be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. That is a loaded answer. Our God has the ability even to save us out of this furnace. He might not save us. He might let us burn. Sometimes life happens. Either way, we believe in God. That's faith. It isn't just, hey, I will believe in God if he saves me. It was, I believe in God either way. Good things, bad things, ups or downs, whatever life takes me, whatever God allows to happen, I'm just going to believe in God. That's faith. That's crazy. That's incredible faith. That's amazing. This infuriates the king. He has him bound. The furnace is heated up to 7 times its normal heat. The soldiers take him up to the furnace, and the heat is so intense, if you can imagine them getting up there and they're ready to throw him in, the heat from the furnace actually kills the soldiers, and the 3 fall into the furnace. Probably that drawing should have had him going up further to the top so they could put him in, because they go into the furnace. And I love the end of this story. Starting in verse 24. Then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished. They're in the fire, right? They're in the fire. And he rose up in haste. He declared to his counselors, oh, hey, guys, did we not cast 3 men bound into the fire? They answered to the king, true, O king. Yes, we did. And he answered and said, but I see 4 unbound, walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt, and the appearance of the 4th is like a son of the gods. Something crazy's going on. And Nebuchadnezzar came near the door of the burning fiery furnace. He's probably on the other side, looking in there, and he declared, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, servants of the Most High God. Ooh, he's gone back to their God now, as he's standing next to this monster idol he's just constructed. Come out, come here. And then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out from the fire, and the satraps, the prefects, the governors, king's counselors gathered together and saw that the fire had not had any power over the bodies of these men. The hair of their heads was not singed. Their cloaks were not harmed. No smell of fire had come upon them. Nebuchadnezzar answered, you don't witness that and go, oh, that's neat. This profoundly affects the king. Nebuchadnezzar answered and said, blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel, delivered his servants who trusted him, and set aside the king's command and yielded up their bodies rather than serve and worship any god except their own God. Therefore I make a decree. Any people, nation, or language that speaks anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be torn limb from limb, and their houses laid in ruins. For there is no other God who is able to rescue in this way. And then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. I don't know, what do you do with a statue then? His statue was just declared irrelevant, but we don't know that. from the story. I look at this story and I think, why do we fear men as believers? If you're here as a Christian today, a follower of Jesus Christ, why do we fear men? Why do we allow workplace rules to affect how we interact with people at work? I mean, they're not like throwing us in the fiery furnace, you know? They're not like telling us what we have to eat. In the little things even, these guys were like, oh, we'll do what God says, not what you say. Thank you. Thanks, King. No thanks. Why do we do that? Why are we intimidated by family and friends into being quiet about our faith? Why do we allow songwriters to influence the way we live? Top 40 pop stuff. Why do we allow Hollywood actors and politicians to tell us how to act? Why do we get marching orders from any political party? It's ludicrous. Is our God not beyond that? Of course he is. Why don't we have the boldness to live out the faith that's in our hearts? These guys really weren't exceptional. They're just guys who believe in God. Honestly, authentically believe in God. They lived out their faith. They actually believed it. It wasn't like religion to them, just a religious exercise. They believed and lived out their faith. Here's my encouragement, my challenge, whatever you want to call it. Stop being intimidated by our culture. Just stop it. I'm talking to myself here too. Just don't allow it. Stop letting unbelievers define your lifestyle and your faith. Read this book. When it says do something, do something. If it says don't do something, don't do something. Don't let anybody influence you one way or the other, even to the minor things of when it says what to eat. Just follow it. Just follow it. It's really that simple. And understand, every story doesn't end with the people not getting burned. They were quite aware of the fact they might die. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. This might end poorly for us. God is still God. That doesn't change him. It just changes how my story went. In the midst of anything you go through in life, keep your faith in God. Keep your faith. Your faithfulness might lead you to a promotion like they got, or it might lead you to losing your job. It might lead you to making new friends. It might lead you to losing friends. It might lead you to having closer, better family relationships. It might lead you to losing ties with family members. But see, that's on them. It's not on you. You just live this. I was going to say you be you. Don't be you. Be this. You be this. You be who God calls you to be, and let God take care of the rest. Let's pray.